Alright, let's talk about something the UFC really doesn't want to spend too much time on. Fight fixing, betting scandals, federal investigations, and fighters getting their careers torched while nobody tells them anything. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not Reddit speculation. This is documented, confirmed, on the record. And it keeps happening, over and over. Let's start from the beginning. James Krause 2022. If you don't know this name, you should. James Krause was a UFC fighter turned coach. Pretty well respected. Had a decent career as well. But more importantly, he had a gambling operation on the side where he was giving out betting picks to paying subscribers. Picks on UFC fights from a guy who was actively cornering UFC fighters. Think about that for a second, man. You've got a coach who knows exactly what condition his fighter is in walking into a fight. Injuries, mental state, game plan, everything. And he's selling that information to gamblers. This is the definition of insider trading but for fists. His fighter, Darrick Minner, drew unusual betting interest while fighting with a known injury. Information that was allegedly being used for betting purposes. Minner and Jeff Molina both got 3-year suspensions. Krause got banned from cornering. And the UFC said they were watching everything, locked in and vigilant, with eyes wide open. Cool. But November 2025, Isaac Dulgarian. Fast forward a couple years, new name, same energy. Isaac Dulgarian drops from a -250 favorite to -154 right before his fight against Yadir Del Val. Massive line movement. Alarm bells everywhere. The UFC was alerted to suspicious line movement on the match by sports betting watchdog Integrity Compliance 360. But they didn't pull the fight. They let it happen. Dulgarian lost. Even DC and Michael Chiesa were openly confused on air. They called Del Val's finish white belt stuff. And the UFC's response? Dana White goes to the press conference and says, and I'm paraphrasing, people are saying there's 100 suspicious fights and that's clickbait nonsense. We're watching everything. Meanwhile, the FBI and the Nevada Athletic Commission launched an investigation. Dulgarian got cut. And then, and this is my favorite part, Dulgarian goes on record saying fighters should get a percentage of bets placed on their fights. His exact words, I'm doing all the work. Brother. This is something you say when you've thought very carefully about the economics of fight fixing and landed somewhere deeply unfortunate. January 2026, UFC 324. Alex Hernandez versus Michael Johnson. So now we're this year. The UFC's big debut on Paramount Plus. Historic event. Big moment for the promotion. And hours before the prelims even start, a fight disappears off the card. No announcement, no explanation, just gone. Dana White confirms it at the post-fight press conference. The Gaming Integrity Service called. Betting irregularities on Hernandez versus Johnson. And White says, I'm not doing this again. And he pulled it. Good. Right move. Lessons learned from November. Except nobody tells Hernandez anything. Nobody tells Johnson anything. Two professional fighters who cut weight, flew out, did the media, did the weigh-ins, and then get told their fight is off and there's suspicion in the air and good luck figuring out the rest. Hernandez spends 5 weeks in silence. No answers from the UFC and nothing from the FBI. Just sitting there with a cloud over his name. And when he finally speaks, he says it's the first time someone's been falsely accused of fixing a fight and there's no system in place to protect fighters when this happens. His exact words. Who's looking out for me in that case? Nobody, Alex. That's the answer. Nobody. And here's what actually bothers me about all of this. The UFC has a gaming integrity service. They are clearly monitoring lines. They clearly have the infrastructure to catch this stuff. Or at least get tipped off about it. Good. But the pattern here is damning. This is the 3rd public federal investigation into suspicious betting activity around the UFC. 3rd. And each time the UFC's public posture is, we're on top of it, we caught it, nothing to see here. Move on to the next fight card. Nobody asks the harder questions, which is, how deep does this actually go? Because the cases that get caught are the ones with obvious line movement, massive and detectable swings that trigger the watchdog services. What about the subtle ones? What about the fights where someone just quietly puts money on the right outcome through the right channels and nobody's line moves enough to raise a flag? We don't know. And the UFC isn't exactly holding press conferences to dig into that. Meanwhile, the fighters, the ones actually absorbing the damage, are the last to get any information and the first to have their reputations questioned. Hernandez is comparing himself to Muhammad Ali being monitored by the government, which admittedly is a bit dramatic, but the underlying point isn't wrong. His career got frozen, his name got muddied, and nobody from the UFC or the FBI is coming out to formally clear him. He just got rebooked and that's supposed to be enough. And this is not just a UFC problem, by the way. The NBA got rocked by a scandal where Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rozier were arrested by the FBI for game rigging. MLB pitchers Emmanuel Clays and Luis Ortiz are awaiting trial for rigging pitches. The entire American sports betting landscape is a mess right now because gambling got legalized everywhere and the oversight didn't scale with it. But the UFC is a specific case because MMA is uniquely vulnerable. It's an individual sport. One fighter can lose a fight without it looking suspicious. It's combat. Stuff happens. The margins are smaller, the paydays for most fighters are modest, and the temptation is real. James Krause figured that out. Dulgarian apparently figured that out. The question is, who else has figured it out and just hasn't gotten caught yet? The UFC will tell us they're handling it. And to be fair, pulling the Hernandez fight was the right call. Better than letting it play out like November. But right call and systemic solution are two different things. Right now the system is this. Wait for the integrity service to call, react, say nothing publicly, let the fighters twist in the wind, and move on. This is not a system. At most, it's PR damage control. Hernandez asked who's looking out for the fighters. It's a real question. And until the UFC has a real answer, this is going to keep happening. Third time was not a charm. It was just a third time.